We have been trialing and trying to add more people to that team for months now, and we just haven't been able to find the right fit, or we haven't been able to find anyone that really wants to work or do the hospo job as it's described.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are chatting to Zowie Minchin from Zars Bar and Deli in Northcote in Melbourne. Zowie did something pretty crazy, which was open a restaurant during a pandemic. It was pretty challenging, very admirable, and I know it's been a super busy period. Zowie, there are lots of things that we are going to talk about today, some real hot button topics for the industry. But firstly, I would just like to say welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dan. Hi.
Hi. So, I guess in hospitality, it's rare that there are typical weeks, but what would you say your weeks are like at the moment?
I guess it's tough for me to say that I've got a regular week because, to be honest, Dan, this last fortnight is really probably the only first fortnight that we've had of regularity. Since we opened, it's been, obviously we're in lockdown for a while, so we just ran the deli for a good portion of time, and then then we were frantically trying to get bums on seats when we could, and when we opened the bistro. And then there was a bit of a tsunami, really, when we opened the doors, because that was during Christmas time. So we had crazy Christmas couple of weeks, and then we closed for a few days, opened again for New Year's Eve, closed for a few days. There's been a couple of public holidays. So I just feel like in the last couple of weeks, things have maybe the first time I've been able to, A, get a really good snapshot of the business, but B, I guess a regular week for me is wake up, go to the restaurant and do lunch, dinner service, and then back home, and then rinse, repeat, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the last couple of weeks for me have been the first glimpse of normality for about a year. And for me, it's more about kids being back at school, husband going to the office half the time. And yeah, just feeling like I can actually think about 2021 and try to be a little bit deliberate about it. Wouldn't say I've totally cracked that code at all. But yeah, I know what you mean. Just it's like we are sort of finding a bit of a rhythm. So give us a little bit of a history of you, Zowie, and bring us up to date with what on earth possessed you to open a restaurant during a pandemic.
Yeah, okay. That's a very good question. My background and my history and, my upbringing, I guess I could say is hospitality. My parents owned a catering company and a restaurant in Perth when I was younger. So, my younger years were spent in the kitchen helping mum. I've got one of my earliest hospo memories was standing in the kitchen mixing a big bowl of cocktail sauce and looking out, at the crowd outside. I think we're at Rose Hancock's and Lang Hancock's property at the time, and looking at the crowd and mixing the sauce. I think that's my earliest hospo memory. So I think I was about maybe 9 years old at that time.
That's such a WA scenario.
It's very WA
setting
that one
for us there, yeah.
At Rose Hancock's house, yeah. And then I remember my dad showing me how to sort of spin bitters in a glass, making a lemon lime bitters behind the bar. And I think I was illegally serving booze at like 14 years old or something. So, I really feel like I've, been brought up in the industry, so to speak.
Yes.
Worked in hospo for many, many years. I've worked in Spain and France and most of the time actually in Lanzarote in Spain. But then moved to Melbourne where, cut my teeth here working with the likes of Paul Wilson at the Botanical. I ran Karen Martini's restaurant, Mr. Wolf, for her for a few years. Worked for Salvatore, Saint Ali, and lots of sort of smaller kind of little pop-ups and restaurants and cafes and that kind of thing. And then I somehow was steered into events and started working in with the Atlantic Group doing catering. And we were doing catering on a really big scale. So we were working at the races, the VRC and Grand Prix. And I was a few years into that and just thought, wow, this is really not my jam. Those huge, big catering gigs, although the experience was phenomenal and I really, did learn a lot from that. I just realised it wasn't really my thing. And then I started working in event production, started my own event production company. So I've been doing that for 6 years now. A company called Zowie Projects, and working on festivals like Dark Mofo, Laneway Festival, um, out in the weekend, Boogie Festival, Unify Festival, like a bunch of different cool gigs. Mostly working in the food and beverage side of things, either wrangling food trucks or running the bars, doing pop-up style events. And to be honest, Dan, that's sort of where I was at when we went into lockdown. I think we were talking, I don't know, when was that? Was that March, April?
In the blur.
In the blur. So when all that happened, I was doing some event and marketing work for the nurses union, and I was working from home, and I had a call from a broker and said, look, I think you need to come and have a look at this space, because I had been looking for venues for years. I've always popped my head into a for lease space or a for sale space. I've always wanted to open my own venue, but just never really knew when or how. And so, I went and had a look at the space, which is literally at the top of my street, in Northcote, so not very far from home. And I thought, well, I didn't really know what the landscape of festivals and events was going to be like. We still don't know what that looks like. And so, the festivals and events that I were producing were on a large scale. So it was a really quick decision. It was just felt right. And I didn't have any fear, strangely enough. I just thought, like working from home, I knew that we needed a really good deli close by, somewhere to go and buy good salads and sandwiches, but tin of anchovies and salami. It's sort of, there was nothing really like that in Northcote. I took the keys, and it wasn't really until I was like in mid-build, one of my really good mates came in, and we were building the site. And as he walked out the door, he turned around and he said to me, "Hey Zozo, ballsy." And I just kind of realized at that point, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? It just sort of rolled and into it. And next thing you know, I am. I'm, a couple of weeks of opening a venue in the middle of a pandemic, but
Wow. What an amazing story. You've just been really at the epicenter of so many important Melbourne food things and places and happenings, haven't you? If I think about when Paul Wilson was at Botanical, like that was the place to be. I mean, it really took that whole gastro pub thing in Melbourne to a new place. And Mr. Wolf, it's been such an important restaurant for Melbourne. And those big events, even though, they weren't really your jam, I mean, they are so much part of the Melbourne tapestry. I was at the tennis last night, and, as much as that's had its detractors this year, simply because of, the fact of bringing in COVID-riddled people from all over the world, it is a great part of the Melbourne landscape. And, big events that draw people from all over the world, it's such an important part of what's made Melbourne the city that it is. But, yeah, I mean, if I think about all the things that you've done, it's like, no wonder you're fearless. You've kind of done it all.
Yeah, when we were building the restaurant, I just put the project together as if I was putting together a festival, and the hours on the build and the time that we had to build it. I mean, we had a whole month, and for me that's huge. Like normally when I'm building a festival, it's like you've got to get it up in a couple of days and you've got to get it down in a couple of days and get it to the next city. So, I was kind of like, this is really nice. I've got heaps of time, and yeah, it wasn't really until I opened the doors, to be honest, that we felt the pinch.
Yeah, well, one of the places that many people have felt the pinch over the past few months has been staffing. Like there are not enough staff around to fill all the slots in all the many venues. Tell us about that from your point of view.
Yeah, look, that's definitely something that's really really pushing on us at the moment. I've got a core team of solid legends, and they're just so fantastic at what they do, and they're so hardworking, and they're so committed to the business, and they really share the vision. And it's I just have this beautiful bunch of professionals that work with me, and we have been trialing and trying to add more people to that team for months now, and we just haven't been able to find the right fit, or just we haven't been able to find anyone that really wants to work or do the hospo job as it's described. We've trialed many people, and most of them will say things like, look, I don't, it's a really nice place and I really like working here, but I just don't want to do closes. I don't want to have to do the late nights, or, I can work for you, but I can only do Monday to Thursday because I can't work the weekends, or, I don't really like, opening because I don't like bringing the furniture in and out. And it's just like, wow,
Wow.
this Costco though, like, well, where have you worked before where you haven't had to? We had a girl on trial the other night and she said she didn't really like having to polish the glasses, and it was just like, where have you worked? Like, how are you? Yeah, so we're really struggling at the moment, and it's also just putting a lot of pressure on me because I'm carrying the hours as well. I do every lunch and dinner service, and if we had more staff, then I would be able to sort of pull back a bit. And if we had another manager, Nick, my assistant manager, wouldn't have to do all the closes. So yeah, the team in general is feeling the pressure, not just myself and the business. So yeah, hopefully we get some more people soon.
That is really massive. I mean, do you think, let's just say, okay, someone doesn't want to work weekends. Do you think it is there are just so many jobs going at the moment that eventually they'll be able to find a job that, suits the hours that they want to do? I mean, do you feel like employees at the moment just really feel like it's their market?
Oh, totally. Yeah, 100%. Like I'm looking at people that are applying for jobs at the moment. If they don't want to do closes or they don't want to do weekends, and we're looking at how we can still bring them on and accommodate those rosters. At least it will sort of, I've got a couple of my guys are doing 6 days a week at the moment, and although they said they're fine with it at the moment, I just know that it can't go on like that forever. So if they can pick up some new people pick up the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, then you can take the pressure off, and have my other guys just reduce their hours a bit. But yeah, it's like pretty much staff can walk into a venue and say, if they're really good at their job, they can say, this is when I want to work and this is what conditions I want to work under. And we're, as employers, we're like, okay, whatever you want, as long as you come and work for me and you do a good job. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And I mean, how did your core team, how are they going to feel about that if someone's just really, picking and choosing which parts of the job they want to do?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, I'm pretty flexible in all the team. Like they all have, everyone's got sort of things that they do and can and can't do. So everyone does have the flexibilities, and I listen and I hear and I, understand what's happening in their personal lives, and we have accommodated that on the current team's roster. So I don't feel like it would be unfair to the team because they've all sort of had, they've got space to have that flexibility. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to have someone come to you in the hospo world when you're running a business that's all day 6 days a week, and someone says I don't want to do weekends. It's like, oh, really? That's tough. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I can see it from all sides. It's like, I guess everyone's just got to come to the table, and hopefully you can find a scenario that's going to work for everybody. But yeah, it's really tricky times.
It is.
Speaking of tricky, how's it going with customers? How are you finding the vibe there?
Look, our customers through the lockdown period and through Christmas time and opening up the venue were just amazing. They were just so incredible. Like the support from the community was really overwhelming, and it was just this real sense of like, we're here for you, you're here for us, we're here for each other, and it was really quite beautiful. And we would have people come into the restaurant and say, or when we were running the deli, and just saying, thank you so much for doing something positive, thank you so much for opening something like this, and showing us that things aren't closing down and things aren't ending, that there is positivity and there is hope. And that was really heartwarming, and there was a few little cute tears shed here and there from just people being so lovely. I've found, however, going into this year, there has been a slight shift, although we do have a really strong supportive network. I'm finding that there is the odd customer that's coming in that is being quite harsh and a little brutal. And I think I sort of messaged you the other day, Dan, and said, there's some Google reviews that have popped up that are just like, wow, that's just mean, you know? Like, shit, I'm doing my best here, you know? We're really doing everything we can to make sure you have this most beautiful experience. And, you know, from the way that we've set the venue and the attention to detail and, you know, everything from the plates and how hard the chefs are working and the beautiful food that, you know, Kian Fenordi, my head chef, is cooking. Like, everything we've really trying. And then, you know, you get an email or you get a Google review and it's just heartbreaking. It's like, why are you, like, why? You know, it's like some of the things are just not true as well. You just think that's just really not necessary.
Where do you think it's coming from? I mean, do you feel like customers' expectations, there's a mismatch there, or people are just in a super bad mood, or I don't know, do people feel more entitled than they did a while ago? Like, what do you think? Where do you think it's coming from?
It's interesting. One of my friends we were having this conversation the other day, and she was saying that she feels that people's needs are higher and people have these higher expectations of what they want to get from the experience. And there's almost this expectation that, you know, this is not all customers, definitely not the majority of customers, but there would the odd customer that will come in and be like, okay, I'm here and it's your job to really complete my entire experience. And they sort of take the responsibility off themselves and don't sort of go there and go, I'm going to have a beautiful time with my friends or my partner, and I'm going to come here and I'm just going to really enjoy myself. It's just that this high level of, you have to, you know, roll out the red carpet and, you know, put everything out there for me to complete my complete dining experience. And I think, you know, some of the onus has to go back on to the diner sometimes and go, well, you need to enjoy yourself as well, you know, or you need to enjoy your company. Like, I can't do it all for you.
Yeah, it's like people just sitting there like a lump of wood expecting you to find like the fun button for them and just
that's right. I mean, you see a couple and you'll be like, oh, they're not having a good time, so you'll try to like perk them up, and you want everyone to have a nice time and a nice dining experience, but sometimes you can only do so much.
You mentioned to me a while back, you know, you have to institute certain conditions around bookings simply because, you know, of the way things are at the moment in terms of numbers. And I think that when we spoke about that, your numbers were much more restricted than perhaps they are today. And there was a guy that just really didn't want to look at it from the business's point of view. It was just, he just wanted the table. He wasn't sure how many people were going to be there. Didn't quite want to land on a time. I mean, it was all on his terms. Have you had some tricky situations dealing with things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we still every week we'll have a situation like that, Dan. We'll have, you know, I had a table come in the other night, and you know, they had a conversation with my manager during the day and said, look, there's definitely 4 of us for dinner, but maybe there might be another 4 joining us later on for drinks. So there might be 8, but there's definitely 4 for dinner. So we booked the table for them at their booked time at 7:30 for 4 people for dinner. And when they arrived, they were so upset that there wasn't a table of 8 for them. And I said to them, but I can't book a maybe some people coming for drinks later, but also it's in the middle of a Friday night dinner. So I would expect that if you book a table that everyone's going to come to eat. But yeah, some customers just don't have that concept of, you're running a venue, and I don't think people really understand how hard it is to actually make profit in hospitality. It's really, really tough. So, you know, you need to get maximum revenue out of your seats, and I just don't think that the general public really don't understand that. And why would they? You know, that's not sort of something that they would know. But yeah, there would be nice to have a little bit more consideration around it.
It's interesting. I mean, you presumably, if those people were inviting someone over to their house, they'd want to know if they were really going to come.
True. That's true. Yeah.
It's a strange one. I suppose it's just that expectation that your place is a public space and they can use it however they want to in the moment, but it just doesn't work like that for a business.
Yeah, I guess that's something I've really had to get used to is, you know, because I feel that my venue is like my heart and soul, and I've, you know, my heart in my sleeve kind of thing. And it's something I really, really have had to get used to, is that it's not my house, you know, like people, it is a, well, it's not a public place, but people treat it like a public place, and it's sort of their space. They book the, you know, the table, or they come in and they have these certain expectations about what they want to do whilst they're there. And I kind of have had to take a bit of a step back and not be so protective, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So let's talk about something else that I know you're really passionate about, and that is payroll tax. Do you want to introduce us to your concerns around that?
Ouch. Yes, payroll tax. It's a concept that just completely blows my mind. Like, I can't get my head around why we would be taxed for employing people when we already pay payroll tax, company tax, GST. It's like we're being penalized for employing more people, but also we're being taxed on a cost that we have. So the higher the cost it is to us, then the more we have to pay. It's like double whammy.
Yeah.
And it's just I've been doing some research on it, and it's something that was invented, I think, in, I don't know the year, but in war times, you know, and the reason why it was implemented then is not the reason why we have it now, and it's just something that's still here. But yeah, I mean, I'm literally looking at my business at the moment, and if I can, I think it's $54,000 a month is the threshold um, of payroll. So if you pay that much money each month, then you will then pay, I think it's up to almost 5% of that back to the government. So we're, my bookkeeper and I are currently looking at, like, well, do we close the venue on a Tuesday when we don't have a huge, it's not a big day for us, and Sunday nights aren't a huge night for us, and so do we reduce our payroll back to, you know, I think it's the 12.5 grand that we need to a week, by closing those days and reducing our payroll, so then we don't have to at the end of the year pay the $35,000 in employment tax. It just doesn't. It just, it's. I think it's a false economy for the government as well, because then they're not collecting my GST and my, you know, income tax for those days that I close. So
Yeah, it's a real disincentive, isn't it? Yeah, so my research on payroll tax, the history of payroll tax in Australia, is that it came in 1941, and at that time it was 2.5%. So yeah, considerably less than the 4.85% that it is now. And it was introduced to finance the federal government's decision to pay child endowment, which was 5 shillings a week. So I think it was that maybe the men were off at war and the women went to work, and we needed to pay to look after the children. I think that's the kind of scenario that it was.
Yep.
And obviously, that's, you know, it's come a long way from that. But I think governments do they struggle to give up taxes, and so when it was levied, it was a federal government tax, and it was handed over to the states, I think, in the 70s, at which time basically the feds basically did all the tax except for payroll, which was given to the states. And then it seems like it's gone a long way from its origins, and now it just seems like a very a counterintuitive disincentive to doing business.
Totally.
So it is weird. I mean, there have been some COVID-inspired concessions, like it was deferred last year, and I think it was waived last year, and I think you can defer it this year. But then, well, that's not really good to just incur a debt to the government and just rack it up so that you can pay it next year along with next year's payroll tax. And there is a small concession that if your payroll tax goes up, you can get 10 cents to the dollar back, which is like a new jobs concession, I guess. But that's really crazy too, because it's like if they're on the one hand saying that we can see that you're employing more people, then you would think that would be rewarded, not just penalised less.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very confusing. Tax in general confuses me, but that's the one that confuses me the most.
Yeah. So what are you doing about it?
The bookkeeper and I are just looking at, you know, how the figures are stacking up. Like I said, we're possibly going to be looking at closing on a Tuesday and a Sunday. We're looking at all of this tomorrow to see whether or not we can get the payroll down to below what it needs to
Yep.
be.
Yeah.
I really don't want to do that. Like I feel that there's plenty for us. Tuesday is sort of like a bit of a reset day. It's where we get all our deliveries, and there's definitely a purpose for Tuesdays, even though it's not a huge revenue day for us. I think that might put a bit of pressure on the week if we have to roll it all into a Wednesday. But I don't know. We're just shuffling things around at the moment, and since I've opened, it's really been the first time I've been able to start doing some of this reflective management. So,
Yeah.
Not sure.
Are you doing anything about it from a sort of agitation activist point of view? Are you campaigning on it at all?
Yeah. I don't know, but I have I did some work with Catherine Andrews when I was at the Nurses Union, and I had her contact details. So I was like, I'm sorry if this is inappropriate, but who would I speak to about payroll tax?
Right. So that's the wife of Dan Andrews, the Premier, for people who don't know.
Yep, just went straight to the top. And she's so lovely. And she just said, yep, no problems. Let me just see if who I can direct this to. And then she got back to me and said, look, I've passed your details on to the department that handles this, and someone will be in contact with you soon. So it's gone up the chain. So I'm just waiting for a phone call now. But next step would be to call Lena Messina, our local mayor, and our local councillors, and just see, if there is just a seat at the table so we can have these discussions really and see who it is that we can ask the question to. I mean, to lift the threshold would be ideal. I mean, I know that they're not going to take the tax away, but for small hospitality businesses, I think anything that the government can do to help us after having to really battle through the last 6 months, any help is good help, and I think this is a good start.
Well, I think there's definitely, just in the policies that have come to ease the payroll burden over the past year, there's definitely a recognition that it is a significant burden for businesses. So surely the next step is just to chuck it out.
Yeah, you think so?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Something else, that has been around or is around at the moment but may not be forever is extra outdoor space for dining. Do you want to hang on to those extra spaces?
Oh, totally. And so do the locals. Everyone, I would get asked at least twice a day, are you going to keep it? Are you going to keep it? And I'm like, yeah, I hope so. Like, I think it's really changed the whole vibe in Northcote. I'm not just in Northcote, in all of the suburbs, and especially the city. I think the outdoor dining has really changed the vibe on the streets at evening times. It's just fantastic. And I think not only being able to, obviously increase your capacity, which was the original idea behind implementing it, but it just brings a really fantastic atmosphere out into the street. And Melbourne doesn't have a lot of outdoor dining. There's not a lot of al fresco, and if you go to somewhere like Perth, it's all al fresco. So it's just really nice to see that, bringing the dining to the streets. I love it.
Yeah, but have you ever noticed the difference between the weather in Perth and Melbourne?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point you raise. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think about what we're actually going to do when it starts raining a bit more. But we would invest in cover if we had some clear indication that it was going to stay. But we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll start a petition.
I think it's the reliability of the weather as much as it's, the actual condition of the weather at the time. I think Perth weather is much less changeable than Melbourne. But, having said that, I guess the fact that you can have 4 seasons in a day also means that you can be prepared for anything. And any Melbourne person that goes out without, sort of something warm in their bag, just hasn't been living in the city long enough. So we shall see. I hope those spaces stay as well, and we can make full use of them, because it just seems crazy to give up, those vibrant dining spaces just to put a car. That just seems dumb when you look at it. Yeah,
and I think if you speak to the majority, I think the majority of people would be keep it. I think the diners as well as the businesses. I really do hope there's a bit of a feedback audit on that. Be nice to see it stay.
Well, in the city of Port Phillip, where I am, there are QR codes on some outdoor spaces at little parklets. So not the commercial ones, but City of Port Phillip's just built some random council ones that you can just sit down on. And they've got QR codes on them which link through to a feedback form where you can say how much you love it. And I've been madly QRing them and saying how much I love them because, yeah, they should stay. There should be more public space and more spaces for private businesses that keep the city and the suburbs vibrant.
Great idea.
Yeah, it's really good. So, Zoe, is there anything else on your mind?
Apart from dinner service tonight, Dan, right now, not much. I think I really hope, crossing all fingers and toes, that we just keep tracking, Melbourne keeps tracking the way that we are, and we don't have another full lockdown. I think that would be a crisis point for a lot of businesses, and I think it would be the make or break for a lot of hospo venues. So yeah, I'm just crossing all fingers and toes that we just keep tracking the way that we're tracking.
Yeah, well, I think almost it's counterintuitive to say that, but the fact that we've had some cases come out of quarantine and that we have been able to manage them with excellent contact collection and testing and tracing does inspire confidence that, you know, we've got the systems, people are using them by leaving their contact details at venues and, you know, keeping up with the public health messaging, getting tested if they feel unwell. You know, maybe we've just got a bit of a handle on this.
Yeah, I agree.
So when I finally come in for dinner, what am I going to have?
Well, I think you should go the chef's degustation, and then you can try a little bit of everything. But probably one of our most popular dishes would have to be the steak frites. It's just a really bloody good steak, and who doesn't like a steak frites? It's the gnocchis. Well, we make our own pasta in house, so we're making a lot of pasta. We sell it takeaway in the deli, so you can come and get some gnocchi or pappardelle or whatever, and we have sauces to go. But in the dining room, we're doing pasta nights on Wednesday nights, which are super fun.
Wow.
Yeah, we're booked out every Wednesday night, so give us a heads up and we'll find a place for you, Dan. But
it all sounds good. And I reckon those people, you know, who might have 4 friends coming for drinks should just get all some stuff from the deli and put it in their own fridge at home and just let the night unfold as it does without stressing you out.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we try to promote just drinks in aperitivo. So we do aperitivo in the afternoon. So from 3 to 5 daily after, you know, in between lunch and dinner. So we've definitely created a culture of people that want to come just for drinks, and most people get it. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Okay, Zoe, it's so good to have a chat to you. Have a great service, and thank you for chatting to me at Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dan. See you soon. Bye.
See ya. Bye. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.